Hello, I'm Mark, and welcome to another episode of my vlog series. In today's episode, I will be going over how you can create a custom gravity system on a physics vehicle, and I'm going to be doing this through my physics movement plugin. And this is kind of an answer to a question that I got from a couple of people now, wanting to use my vehicle plugin for games that they're creating, but wanted to know if they could use it with these new spherical map plugins that are coming out for Unreal Engine. So I guess planetary exploration games are going to be the big rage for the next couple of years. So I put together a quick and dirty prototype, which is seen here, and that's kind of what I'm going to be going over in this blog. So, but the same idea, concept, and technique can be used for really any physics body that you might want to attach to a planet like this. So as you can see here, I've got this little spiffy Jeep. Assets being created. It was created by Digital Drive Studios, so great, shout out to them. I really like this Jeep. And all I'm doing is I'm just driving it around a sphere, as seen here. So I will go ahead and we'll bring up the blueprints and kind of show you how I created this setup using my plugin so that this Jeep can now drive on the surface of a sphere as seen here. So let's get started. Okay, so let's come into our solution. So I'm just going to come back to this 4x4 Jeep. So this is the Jeep. This is the original Jeep in the original configuration that I left off during a tutorial I did on how to build this Jeep out. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate the Jeep. And I'm going to give it an abbreviation of grav. So, and then we're going to open it up. And I'm just going to bring up the blueprint. So this is our grav Jeep. And so the first thing we need to do when we want to customize the gravitation is to click on the root skeletal mesh, since this is where our physics simulation is, and we're going to disable gravity. So this is Unreal Engine's gravity simulation. So if you disable it, we're still a physics body, so we're still a physics particle, but we just aren't going to be observing the built-in gravity attraction. So I'm going to turn that off, save. All right, so next up, we want to simulate gravity. So where I'm going to do that on the event tick. So again, this is just a quick way on how you can do this with my plugin. But it's the same idea. If you're into physics and you're kind of familiar with the physics setup that Unreal Engine has, it's a very similar system. I didn't kind of go off the reservation too much when I created my own. So I'm just going to grab my vehicle movement component, and then I'm just going to say add force. So I'm going to add the force, and as you can see here, we have add force, and then I'm going to use an acceleration change. And for this, I'm just going to go ahead and split it, and I'm just going to go ahead and connect it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to do a simple, we're just going to do a simple little reduced gravity environment. So the direction is going to be negative because we want it to go down, not up. And I am going to then say, so 980 is 980 centimeters per second, right? So that is kind of like gravity here on Earth. But if you want to reduce it, I'm just going to go to something very, very drastic. I'm going to say go to 280 instead. So this is going to give us this is going to kind of give us an upwards push to kind of mimic a low gravity environment. And then finally, this is just unique to my plugin. I'm going to use an apply force. So the way that this works within my plugin setup is I have a deferred forces system. So what we do is we actually create these forces through the add force and queue them up. And then and once they're all queued up, then we'll use this to execute all of the forces in that array. And I do this to kind of try and reduce or minimize any bias any one of these forces could have as we're kind of calculating. So that's kind of why we're doing it this way. So that should reduce the force load. So I'm going to hit compile and save, and then I'm going to move this off screen. And I'm going to come to the content drawer. I'm going to put our grav cheap in. Going to give it some space. Going to make sure that this cheap is disabled. Yep. So let's go to the grav cheap, and I'm going to just enable the player real quick. Alright, so let's go ahead and do this, and as you can see, it bounces around a little bit more stiffly. Which is a good thing. Alright, so I'm going to put a couple of jumps in here as well. Might as well kind of show off this a little bit more than just letting it float to the ground. So I have in my level prototyping, I've got this little level prototyping folder I moved from a older solution, and I'm just going to go grab the ramp. Let's go ahead and just spin this ramp 90 degrees, and let's go ahead and adjust it real quick. So make it so that you can't miss, well, I suppose it could miss that ramp, but there it is. Let's give it a bit more height. Let's give it a bit more of a wedge. Alright, so that looks like a decent ramp, and I'm going to switch over to moving it. So let's move it in front of the cheap, make it a little bit easier. And how's that look? Looks pretty good. And I'm just gonna use Control D and make a duplicate copy, so I can have a second ramp there. Alright, let's fire this back up, and I'm gonna go get my controller, turn my controller on. Alright, so the controller's on. Let's go ahead and test this gravity tree out. So let's fire it up. As you can see, reduce gravity load. I'm just going to go ahead and just accelerate this thing. As you can see, it's yep. So it definitely feels like it's in a much more reduced gravity environment. So alright, so that's if we wanted to just reduce the gravity load, create a custom reduced gravity load. That's one way of doing it. And the other ways would be to actually affect the actual gravity on the map. So if you wanted to kind of keep it as a uniform gravity load, there's a couple other ways we could do this. But if you just want to do it for physics vehicles, or if you wanted to create environments where you might want to change the gravity within a map, you could do it this way. Just chain, turn off the, you can turn that off programmatically in the blueprint. So you could turn on overlap with a trigger. You could turn off gravity, and then turn this on, and then you could then remove it once you get out of that low gravity area. So you could kind of do that for reduced gravity if you wanted to do it that way. And you did, but you didn't want to necessarily change the gravity of the whole map. Of the whole system. All right, so next up is going to be how do we get this vehicle to stick to a sphere. So we'll go ahead and get back into the blueprint and take care of that. So I'm just going to go ahead and stop this real quick. Move my controller off to the side. All right, so to create a gravity on a sphere, we're going to bring back our blueprint. So again, this is on the tick event, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm just going to break this. I'm just going to move this. We'll move this down to here for now. So to do a gravity on a sphere, we need a couple of things. We need to have a origin for that gravity. So to do that, I'm going to create a new variable under variables, and this is going to be I'm going to call this gravity origin. and this is actually going to be a vector. So this is the location of our gravity. This is the origin. So everything is going to be drawn. The idea is, with gravity, everything's going to be drawn to that location, and this location could be determined. We'll determine this when we get our sphere. But so for right now, we just got this variable here. I'm just going to compile and save. Going to try and move this out with my Microsoft going nuts on me. Okay, so that's our origin. So what we're going to do here is, this is how I solved it without having to kind of add any new features into my plugin. So I'm going to say get actor location. So this is the location of the actor, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to take the actor's location and we're going to subtract it from the origin. Okay, so this is, so this will get us, so what we want is, so this is going to get us, and actually before I do that, and then I'm going to give it a direction. So I'm going to multiply it. And so for me, I'm going to just grab this guy, and I'm going to right click on this pin and say float. And this is going to be -1. So that's going to determine the direction. If we don't do this, then this is going to act as a push, and so it's going to push us away from the origin. But we want it to actually pull us to the origin. And then from here, I'm just going to say promote to variable, and this is going to be our acceleration. This is going to be our acceleration vector. So this is the direction that we want our, this is the direction, this is going to give us the direction that we want our vector to go into, right? So by doing this, this is going to be this is going to give us the direction. Now, now we could just go ahead and put this straight into our add force, but that's not going to give us a really good representation of gravity. So there's a couple other calculations I think we need to make here. So next up, I'm just going to go ahead and take this guy again, these two, and I need to get an actual distance as well. So this is going to give me the vector distance. So this is part of the Kismet math library that you can access through the blueprints. So we've got vector 1, we're going to put vector 2 in there, and vector 1 and vector 2 is going to give us a distance. And then with this distance, so this is the actual distance we are from the origin, but what I'm going to then do is I'm going to divide this by the gravity that I want to use. So I'm going to use 980 again. This is 980 centimeters per second square, or centimeters per second. So this is the velocity. So we're going to take this is the acceleration, right? We're going to divide that by the distance, and what that's going to do is that's going to give us the time it's going to take to get there. And then what we're going to then do is going to take that time, right? And then I'm going to go ahead and then do another division on the acceleration vector. And so we have, and what that's going to do is that's going to give me the actual acceleration that I need, or the actual velocity that I need, or the acceleration that I need. It's not a velocity, it's an acceleration that I need in that particular direction. So now we've got vector, we have a vector in a direction, we have a distance in a direction, that's the vector, and then we need to then divide that by the time, that way we can, which is going to be the time interval per second, and then that should then give us a good representation of the gravitational force that we want on when we apply it to that sphere. So then all I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to Seren Vehicle Movement. I'm going to finally add force again. And I'm just going to grab this guy. And park it in there. Make sure that its acceleration change is on. So it's not a force, it's an acceleration now. Acceleration in a direction. And then again, we just need the apply. I'm just going to go ahead and just copy this. Hook that to target, hook that in. So this should then apply this. So now all we need is an origin. So right now this is set to 0, 0, 0, and this is the strength. So let's go ahead and create something which we might want our vehicle to stick to. So I'm going to come into the content drawer and I'm going to come up to blueprints. Actually, I'm going to come to content. I'm just going to put it up here. Actually, blueprints is probably a good place to put it. Scene actors. And I'm just going to create a new blueprint. This is just going to be a simple actor. Just going to call it graph sphere. I'm going to open up, and all I'm just going to do is I'm just going to add a sphere. And I'm just going to make that the default. And that's all I'm going to do. But I'm doing it this way because this sphere is going to be perfectly centered to this actor right here. It's all centered, so because that's what we're going to need for our gravitation point. And then I'm going to just move this off screen, hopefully. And let's go ahead and bring our sphere in. So I'm going to go to content drawer, bring our sphere in. Our sphere looks pretty small. So let's go ahead and in details, I'm just going to come to scale. I'm just going to click on this little lock here. By clicking on this lock, this pretty much says that whatever value I put into any one of these, it will make it uniform across all three of these. So let's just try 50. Yeah, that's a pretty big sphere. Yeah, maybe. Let's go back to details, maybe 60. Make sure we got some clearance. All right, so now that we got our sphere, I'm just going to go and delete the grav tube temporarily. So now that I've got a sphere, right, what I need is the center of this sphere because that's going to be our gravity point. So here's the center of the sphere. And so I'm just going to go ahead and copy that value. And let's go over to our Jeep, gravity Jeep. Bring this back. And I'm just going to go ahead and paste that value into there. There's our origin. So this is, again, if you wanted to, you could have it so you could change the origin. All this is just changing this variable here, but I'm just going to keep this here. It's just going to stay static for now. Let's move this off and let's see if we can get this Jeep to drive on our sphere. So I've got it here. I'm just going to make sure that it's a little bit centered so that there are no surprises. All right, so that looks good. So let's see what happens. Let's just go ahead and I'm just going to save this real quick. And we'll go ahead and hit play. Up. Whoops. Let's also make sure that we select that as the player. All right, so there's our vehicle sitting on top of our sphere. Let's see what happens when we drive it around. And so far, so good. So, and as you can see, it's kind of a bumpy sphere, But yeah, we can move our vehicle. It's kind of jumping around, hitting the bumps, suspension's going. So it looks like there's no real major issues that I have with the vehicle using the plugin out of the box and just using this solution as a way of just getting you on a spherical map. And then if we wanted to get a little bit crazier, we can come back to our blueprint. So we can come back here and I can reduce the gravity. So let's take the gravity to that. So again, this is the gravity that we want to use. So now if I take this off and we start again, as you can see, it's a little bit splashier as our vehicle kind of goes around. And as you can see, it's now getting air because it's a much more reduced gravity environment. Yeah, so that's kind of how you can kind of cheese it a little bit and create the effect of having a custom gravity on a physics vehicle like this. This kind of solution should work for almost any physics body, really. Unreal Engine has APIs very similar to what I have. So if you can find those, it's just adding it as an acceleration and in the direction, and then just making sure that you've got an origin that it can live up to. All right, so I think that's going to do it for this episode of my blog series. If you like what I'm doing, feel free to share and like and share my videos. Greatly appreciate it. If you've got any comments, go ahead and leave them down below. I'll leave a link to the Jeep as well as to my plugin, which is on Patreon right now. And yeah, I'll catch you in the next video. Cheers, and have a great day. Gotta remember to give it a good second.